he died during COVID, and his wife asked me to do a video to share who Mark Watts was. During that video, I realized something that Mark had done that I think was one of the most impactful things in my life. I had heard so many times as I was changing, well, Christ loves you. Mm-hmm. Christ loves you. That was often told to me when I would tell people I was struggling with something, and I felt like I didn't, really deserve any of love. And I really didn't believe anybody would ever love me. And as I sat there and started talking about Mark, that's when I realized that it wasn't Mark looking at me saying, well, Christ loves you for those 3 hours. It was this great big guy, because Mark was a bigger guy, sitting there going, man, I love you. No matter what I said, and it was horrible. I've done some pretty bad things. And the fact that guy kept looking at me saying, nope, I love you. Mm-hmm. Realizing that he really meant that. Mm-hmm. That it wasn't just something he was saying. Mm-hmm. Made me realize that people could actually love me. Mm-hmm. No matter how much I didn't understand it, that people could.
Welcome to Faith in the Line of Duty, a podcast where real people in uniform share how their faith in Christ has carried them through the toughest moments. I'm Daniel Johnson, husband, father, and currently active duty in the United States Air Force. Each episode, I sit down with military members and first responders to talk about the power of the gospel, the strength of community, and how faith transforms lives, even in the line of duty.
The views expressed in this podcast are those of the host and do not constitute endorsement by the Department of Defense, Department of the Air Force, or the U.S. government. Now here's your host, Daniel Johnson.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Faith in the Line of Duty. Today I have the honor of introducing Darrell Smithson. He's a great friend of mine. He served in the firefighter role as an EMT, sheriff's deputy, and in the Marine Corps. So just really excited to have you on here today.
Thank you. Excited to be here as well.
So I'd just like to get started and just tell us a little bit about your childhood and what that was like.
That's very difficult for me. I don't remember my childhood. What I do know of it is mostly stories from my family. I have some flashes of memory, let's put that away. Mm-hmm. So for the most part, just the quick rundown of my family, my childhood is we lived a rather, let's say, different life than most. There were times in my life we lived in very, let's just say, places most people don't, like camps and stuff like that because of financial reasons. Partly also because my mom married a alcoholic, and he didn't work a lot, and unfortunately he was very abusive to my mom and us kids. And because of that, at some point, I don't remember a lot of the age and stuff, at some point my dad came and took us, and then, for lack of better terms, kidnapped us because he wouldn't let my mom have any contact with us. He did all kinds of weird things, like not letting us get mail or phone calls. We would go someplace expecting our mom to show up, but he would go an hour early, and then we would leave before she was supposed to be there. And even if she called and said she was running late or whatever, he would make sure. So eventually we got, I say lucky, my brother actually got the mail from the mail one day, and it was a letter from my mom, so that kind of changed things. And so high school, I was pretty, I would say, considered a normal environment, except for the abusive dad. I mean, there was a situation with me and him, I guess, where rather violent, so that changed things too. And other than that, I think the biggest thing I remember get told about footballs was one of my greatest events that I liked. I was hopeful going to go play that at least college level, but I wound up having to have a couple of knee surgeries when I was younger, and eventually got told that wasn't going to work. So,
what position do you play?
I was a defensive end. I played offensive guard, and defensive end was where I loved to play. Mm-hmm. And so that was my goal when I got to college. And so unfortunately, like I said, defensive end and bad knees really don't go together.
Right. Exactly. So, did you play any other sports in high school?
I did. I did things just as I considered it was just to stay in shape for football. I played basketball. I wasn't the greatest at it, but also with all the surgeries, most of the time that happened during basketball season. So my basketball was like play for a little bit, then surgery recovery period, So then I did track. I didn't do a lot of running for track. I did more of the shot put and the discus. Nice. I really enjoyed it, but I did, as a younger kid, I apparently did a lot of running and hurdles and stuff like that. But as I got older, I was more concerned about getting mass to play football. So running wasn't my best thing, let's put it that way. But one day I was just give you an example of that. Is one day I was running, decided to jump hurdles while I was going down to the discus spot to throw, and I tripped on one of the hurdles and came down and pinned the discus between the ground and my head. And the discus is dull, so it didn't cut my head, but it bruised it so bad that literally the blood rushing to the spot right here made my head pop open, and it took a few stitches to fix that. And the concussion was, part of it.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah. I have a tendency to hurt myself or get hurt. I've knocked on somewhere around 27 surgeries at this point in my life.
Wow. So at what point did you join the Marine Corps?
I joined the Marine Corps, I think, in 1988. I was 18 or so.
Okay. Was it right out of high school?
Yeah, about a year after high school got out. I was quickly learning that that's probably my best chance. Plus, I really wanted to. I mean, I desired initially thinking about doing the SEALs, but because of my bad knees, the Navy pretty much said no.
Right.
And as I was walking out of the Navy recruiter office, this Marine sitting in an office yelled at me and said, because apparently as he put it, he goes, "Why are you looking so glum?" So I told him, and he says, "Well, come in here and talk to me a minute." And so I walked in and sat down, and we started talking about things, and he goes, "Would you join the Marine Corps if I can get you in?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah." He goes, "Because it's just as good as the SEALs." He goes, we go on ships, and we do everything they do. And I said, "Deal."
Right. They're good.
Yep. And so he did. He got me on a medical waiver for my knees. So, that's what started my experience in the Marine Corps.
Gotcha. And so how was being in the Marine Corps when you first joined?
I love the Marine Corps from the beginning. I mean, yes, boot camp's hard. I won't go into the whole story, but I had a drill instructor that wasn't exactly right in certain aspects. He was... I got some injuries from boot camp because of him. So did a lot of other people, but he wound up getting court-martialed and kicked out. That's how bad it was.
Thing,
yeah. But that didn't change me a bit. I just love the Marine Corps. I loved everything about the aspect of, let's just say, the combat part. I say I love everything about it. The part I don't like about the Marine Corps was what a lot of people don't, and that's a lot of the civilian stuff that goes on,
Right.
It's like every job. There's things you love, things you hate, and I'm not, as I was once told, you're not a very good Marine when you're not in the field. You're a great field Marine, but a garrison Marine, you have some issues. I'm like, yeah.
Right.
So.
So you joined in the 80s, and were you there for 9/11 happening? Do you remember what that was like?
Yes. It's funny to me that when 9/11 happened, because when I was in Desert Storm, Desert Shield in 1991, and we were all like really told after all that happens, like, look, you guys, this is your war. You'll never see war again. It's been so long since. And so when 9/11 happened, and that instantly all those conversations started happening about being because I was reservist. And so there started to keep talk about being activated and all that stuff and what was going to happen. And so as I watched 9/11, it was hard to sit there and accept that, in my opinion, things that we allowed to stay in place when we left 1991, left Iraq, I felt like that's part of the reason why this happened. But truth be told, we don't know. It's just, we like to attribute to certain things.
Right. And so what was if we back up a little bit, what was your part in Desert Storm? Were you in infantry?
Yes. I was part of an infantry regiment. My MOS was actually communications, so I was like the grunt with the radio. So we were, as a reserve regiment, we were basically tasked with the primary rear element security. And so our job was to patrol basically up to the frontline units. Unfortunately, I had a colonel that really wanted to go to war, and I got put on his security detail as well. And so there were many times we would go up, as he put it, to make sure we were providing the front line with the security behind them. So I would spend a lot of time up on the front line with some of the other units, just with our colonel, and let's just say it did cause some issues. But that was the most part that I dealt with, is besides in the communication aspect, as in, we have what's called a combat operations center. So in the CLC, you would do a radio watch, and then, so I kind of did both. I had my radio watch, and then I'd go out and do the security detail.
And what would you say was the most challenging part about that time?
I think the most challenging part for Desert Storm, Desert Shield was, one, dealing with a colonel that was kind of a little out there. But two, the initial struggle was, at the time, reserves had never been really activated to do anything. So there was a huge offset between active duty and reserves. It was struggle sometimes to get support. And so that was the first initial thing, is like that struggle there. And then as we progressed, it was a learning experience for everybody. We, as a country, weren't prepared for that. Our communication assets weren't good. We couldn't hardly talk to people. We were still using what was called a PRIC 77 radio, which is what they used in Vietnam.
Right.
Not much change. And so we quickly realized we couldn't communicate with a lot of other units, Army, Air Force, because we didn't have the radios they did. So that was a hard thing for us to do, was to deal with the fact that not only as Marines, we kind of don't get everything that everybody else does, but as reservists, we get even less. And so that was frustrating.
And how many times did you deploy?
Well, Desert Shield and Desert Storm was my first deployment. And then after 9/11, I deployed to Iraq. It depends on how you count deployments. To me, I was just like, no matter what, if I was there a year, I considered it one deployment. The Marine Corps deployments typically are 7 months.
Okay.
So like when I was there for a year, that was technically considered 2 deployments. So I think all total, by the time it got said and done, between the years I spent in Iraq and Desert Shield, I have somewhere around 7, 8 deployments.
Wow.
I deployed so much, and I did a lot of other kind of active duty stuff in the summers because I had the freedom to do that. I would join other units to go do things, and but I ended up with 13 years of active duty as a reservist. That's a little more than most people.
Right. And so what was the first time that you experienced like combat?
In Desert Storm, Desert Shield, we had a little firefight type thing, but most of it was secondary, like missiles coming in and stuff like that. So that was the closest we ever really did then. My first real one was in Iraq. My first deployment. I'm trying to think. That would have been, so 9/11 was 2001, and we went into Iraq 2003. So 2003, 2004 was my first deployment, and was the first period of combat.
Gotcha. And for people that haven't been through that, what would you say that was like?
For me, the I'm a little different. At the time, I was not really Christian, so I lived a really different life than most. And to me, the chaos of combat was really the first time I felt like I was home, because I really fit there. The things I could do and the way I performed and everything made people, for lack of better terms, desire me to be around. And up to that point, I never felt that. I always was, in my world, manipulating things to get what I want. And it was strange for me that all of a sudden people wanted me to be there what I was doing, which is one of the reasons why I deployed so much as a reservist, is I was good at what I did. And so, but also it started creating a little bit of a split in understanding things, because you spend your entire life being told that doing the things you do in combat are not right. And so your brain starts trying to struggle with, okay, I'm doing all these things I've been told my entire life is not right, but yet over here everybody's praising me for what I do. And so it starts to kind of a mental, as I call it, split structural mindset of saying, okay, I'm being told it's okay, but my brain still says it's wrong.
So during that time, like, what did you do to get through that, to kind of navigate that?
Well, like I said, first off, it made me feel comfortable and I was home. So part of it was I just, for lack of better terms, enjoyed being there. But the split forced me to start trying to rectify my life, trying to understand is my purpose, because it became obvious to me that I was willing and able to do things that most people are uncomfortable with, which I knew that in law enforcement. So my primary goals in law enforcement was death investigation and crimes against people. Well, I quickly realized that I could work scenes that most people would not go near. And so in Iraq, the first thing that really started coming to me was I wasn't quite understanding how I was splitting my mind. It was difficult because before that I had never questioned what I did. And so I would say probably the biggest thing was after my first deployment, I did go to church. And I think, like most people, I was going because that's what was expected. And I met a B-2 pilot at church one day, and we had a short conversation about things. And my next deployment, which I think I was home maybe 2 months, he just started sending me books, because that was one of the things we found out about me, is I like to read. And where I was stationed initially in Iraq, there wasn't the availability of getting, a lot of books or anything. So he would just mail me books, lots of books. But he mailed me books that I would never have normally read, faith-based books. And when I started reading them, it partly helped me start focus on something different than combat. So when I did, let's just say, have a rough day or whatever, I would come back, and a lot of times I would read those books to kind of get away from it. And there's something about reading about Christ and God and the things that those books talk about were starting to be things I was starting to desire in my life. The sense of belonging made me want to feel like that I belonged somewhere. And I knew that this combat was a limited situation unless I died. So I think that was what first started to help me, was the belief that maybe there was something else out there besides combat.
And that was probably different than anything you've experienced.
Oh yeah, I'd never considered that I was here for any purpose. I'd never considered that there was actually, for lack of better terms, something out there that truly desired me, that they wanted me to be a part of them, to that loved me, because I didn't understand the word love. I mean, quite quite frankly, in my mind, it was a lie. By looking at and talking about things from my past, it seemed to me that love was only a selfish thing. People wanted to make themselves feel good. It was a mental concept that people created because people wanted to feel like someone loved them. They would find ways to make them feel that way. But to me, it was just a word and basically a lie that people told themselves.
What would you say, as we kind of wrap up like your time in the Marine Corps, what would be your most memorable moment from those deployments?
I would think that one of my most memorable moments of my Marine Corps is the whole aspect of learning even more about the nature of humans. My entire life, I've kind of categorized myself outside of the human race, and as things were changing there, one of my biggest thing was I got activated a lot because I was a cop, a Marine, and so over there they were trying to get cops and Marines and everybody to train Iraqis, and so that's what I started doing. I literally was sent out on my own just to go meet with what was called MITS pits and work and do things with Iraqis. So I kind of just went anywhere I wanted. I would come back with reports to the lieutenant colonel and colonel of the regiment, explain how the Iraqis were doing. I would help plan the operations with the regiment. And learning that in the midst of all that, it didn't matter whether it was an American Marine soldier or an Iraqi soldier or human or civilian or whatever.
Yeah.
The desires were pretty much the same. They wanted their families to be safe. They wanted their kids to grow up and be educated and find a job.
Right.
And so trying to rectify what I could watch what humans could do to each other, but the same side but everybody just wants to live a life. And so that was probably the most memorable thing from that country.
That's definitely a different perspective to look, and I feel like you kind of need to have, especially with seeing all that. And I'm sure that they appreciated what you were doing too.
Somewhere, I can tell anybody there were some of the greatest combat people I served with for Iraqis. They were very bold, they were courageous, and they were willing to and fight for their country. They made it very clear that they weren't fighting for their tribe, which is kind of a thing over there that most people don't understand. But they were very clear, that we're fighting for our country of Iraq. We want our country to be a strong country.
So how did you become a first responder?
Well, like I said, I was a reservist in the Marine Corps. So for the 24 years I was in the Marine Corps Reserves, I also had a career in the outside world. And so because of some of the injuries from the Marine Corps boot camp, I stayed reserve side, and so I started college. And because originally my plan was to go active duty, but like I said, there were some things that happened, so I wound up going reserve. And so I decided to take advantage of the GI Bill and start college. And so aside from the Marine Corps, what had sparked my interest was other things that were kind of adrenaline based. So I wanted to become a cop. I was always interested in for lack of better terms, the criminal mind, specifically the kind that are serial killers and stuff. I mean, I was very interested in again, the way the mind worked. So I went to college and got a degree in criminal justice and a minor in psychology. And from that, I started working part-time. Well, I did an internship with the Sheriff's Department in Johnson County, and from that, I went to work for them. Because, one, I was paying for my own college, so that became a job while I was in college. And then based off of that, I started in fire investigations, became a certified fire investigator, and from that, I started getting interested in firefighting. I started getting interested in being an EMT when I was a deputy because I was showing up on these medical scenes first and had no idea what to do. I knew the basics, but I mean, I'm really frustrated because it's taking 10, 15 more minutes for an ambulance to show up, and I'm just kind of standing there. So I went and became an EMT, and the sheriff was willing to help build me a med kit that went in the trunk of my car. So when I would show up on scenes, I would have oxygen and all the other trauma-related stuff. So I actually got to do things. And
were you able to use those tools?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes, I as an EMT, I almost did more work for my first probably 5 years as an EMT as a deputy.
Wow.
And then I joined the rural fire department in Johns County. And during that process, did some EMT work, but mostly did firefighting. And then from there, I got started working part-time for Warrensburg Fire and working part-time for an EMT service out of Holden, Missouri. And so from all that, I just started working part-time, full-time, and eventually I switched. After a lot of my deployments, I couldn't sit very well. So sitting in a patrol car became a problem. And so I wound up switching from full-time law enforcement, part-time fire, to full-time fire, part-time law enforcement. I always joke with people and tell them, that I got tired of eating donuts, so I joined the fire department and started making lasagna.
Right.
So, that's where I kind of got my careers together. And then towards the end of my career, I started, that's when I really got changed by Christ. Because before that, I wasn't a guy out there to save and serve the public. It was more of I was out there to, meet bad guys and run into burning buildings and all that stuff. But as Christ changed me, I started realizing I was meeting people in the worst day of their lives sometimes. And so I started really trying to make it clear to people that, I was there for them. That I wanted to be there to help them with their day. I don't care whether I was a cop arresting you or whether I was a firefighter coming in to put your house, if your house was on fire, put it out, or if I was an EMT helping you with a medical problem. I wanted to make you understand that I cared.
So at what point did you surrender your life to God? I know that you said you were reading some faith-based books during your deployment, but when was your point where you decided to give your life to Christ?
Well, initially, I was asked to go to a thing called Men's Encounter down in Lebanon, Missouri, and that was probably in 2016, I think. So I went there, and it was a great experience, but initially it wasn't a big change. What happened is my entire life, I basically never really associated emotions at all. I still don't. But one of the things that started happening when I came home my last time during the surgeries, I had several surgeries after my last deployment for some reasons. And during that period, though, I also started having some anger issues, which, like I said, I'd never had any type of thing that really came out like that. And so it was getting really bad. I mean, I had pretty explosive issues, destroyed things and stuff, and it was very common to happen easily 3, 4, 5 times a month. So I went to this event, this men's encounter. It was probably maybe a week later. I realized I hadn't exploded for a week. And then the next thing I know, I'd gone another week. After the second week, I started thinking, okay, what's different? And the only thing that had changed is I'd gone to this men's encounter event. And so from reading, the books and that happening, I started getting even more like, okay, there really might be something to this that can really be a part of my life. So I was asked to go again. They do it every other month. And so I went the next time. This time I was a little bit more open to listening and stuff. So I won't say I made a big change after that. Again, I came home and some things changed. But the biggest thing I noticed again was that the anger explosions were even further apart.
You just pulling back those layers.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you hear a lot of people about what I call miraculous conversions. Like they have something that happens and they instantly surrender their life to God and stuff. I think because of the way I am, God knew it was going to take time. It was going to take a slow process of showing me who He is.
Right.
So again, I was asked to go the third time, and this time I was like really starting to like, okay, I think I'm going to try to really understand. And during this time, something that seemed to just come across me as I listened to a guy named Ryan Huff sit and give his testimony, because that's kind of what happens there. You hear some testimonies and teachings. Well, he had been a teacher of what was called spiritual warfare session the first time I went. And this time he was up there giving his testimony about how he failed. But he kept talking about every time he would come back to God, God was there. And for the first time, that's when I said, hey, that's the God I need.
Yeah.
I need the God that every time I fail will still be there, because I knew I was going to fail. And so I went to Ryan to ask how to get that God.
Yeah.
Ryan literally turned around and looked at me and he says, I don't know what your problem is. He goes, but when you figure it out, he goes, your testimony will reach thousands. And so during that period, I felt like God really wanted me to tell somebody who I was. Every bad thing I did. And the only person there was a guy named Mark Watts. And so I fought it for several hours. And eventually I gave up and I went to Mark, and I started off with looking at him like, man, you're going to hate me when you hear this. And Mark looked at me and goes, nope, I love you. So for the next almost 3 hours, I told this man, and every time I was like, I know you hate me. Mark would go, nope, I love you. So after all that happened, he had gotten another guy that was kind of similar to me with some issues that I'd been through. They said, hey, until you're ready to give this up and you're willing to come to God and pray and ask for Him to take this, you're going to fight it. So they convinced me to go get prayed upon. So they went and they got some of them in there that still this day, the impact of my life, I wish I could talk more to them, but life separates you, and I don't go like I used to. And so they prayed over me, and I came home, and Mark kept talking to me. I started getting more involved in church and started letting people kind of talk to me and get things changed in my life. And man, it's just been one crazy ride after I started changing. I mean, it wasn't like instantly everything was great. I struggled for probably 2 years of trying to figure out who God wanted me to be. One of the biggest reasons, like I said again, I didn't understand love. And when you don't understand love, it's hard to know who God is. So it took me a long time to get that figured out.
Yeah, and Mark probably had a big impact on your life.
Yes. Initially, I didn't know how big of an impact Mark had, but Mark wound up getting cancer and dying.
Sorry to hear that.
That was during COVID. It really was. It was a hard thing for me to understand, because he was such a man of faith. And you hear people talk. Literally, people had told me that God could heal all my medical problems. Because, like I said, I have a lot of nerve damage. I have a lot of issues. But he would tell me if you had enough faith, He'd heal you. And so I struggled with that initially. But when Mark died, I was absolutely convinced at that point that that was not true. Because there's no way that man and his wife and family did not have enough faith. So he died during COVID, and his wife asked me to do a video to share who Mark Watts was. So I tried to do the video several times, and I just couldn't get it going. Well, I finally got to the point where I absolutely had to get it done. I mean, the funeral's happening, and she needs a video, and so I just started talking. And it was during that video I realized something that Mark had done that I think was one of the most impactful things in my life. Was I had heard so many times as I was changing, well, Christ loves you. Christ loves you. But that was often told to me when I would tell people I was struggling with something, and I felt like I didn't, really deserve any of love. And I really didn't believe anybody would ever love me. And as I sat there and started talking about Mark, that's when I realized that it wasn't Mark looking at me saying, well, Christ loves you for those 3 hours. It was this great big guy, because Mark was a bigger guy, sitting there going, man, I love you. No matter what I said, and it was horrible. I've done some pretty bad things. And the fact that guy kept looking at me saying, nope, I love you. Realizing that he really meant that. That it wasn't just something he was saying. Made me realize that people could actually love me. No matter how much I didn't understand it, that people could. And so that, to some degree, is part of my ministry. I tell his wife all the time that when I help someone come to Christ, I will let her know that Mark got another one. Because I tell people I truly believe that what helps me bring people to Christ is doing the same thing. I tell people Christ loves them at times, but when I initially meet you, I want you to understand that I love you.
And that's probably exactly what you needed to hear too. I mean, with everything that you went through, through your childhood and combat and all that. Oh
yeah, I had no understanding of love. I had no belief that anybody loved me. Mom, dad, all that stuff. I struggle with that kind of relationship. Me and my mom, which is crazy, have built a huge relationship. My dad and me never got to. He died before that happened. And it's hard for people to understand that. To me, when my dad died, and I look at him, it's just a person in a box. I don't have this sense of loss or stuff like most people describe. But just like with my mom, I don't have what people talk about, like this emotional connection. I mean, I have more of emotional responses now than I ever have, and quite honestly, I don't understand it. To me, I just feel uncomfortable, good or bad. It's still the same thing. I'm uncomfortable, and I want to change it. God's teaching me that it's okay to be uncomfortable. I can look at somebody and be uncomfortable and tell them I love you.
So your journey of faith in Christ, how is your relationships with people, and how have you changed?
Well, first and foremost, is my family's been very gracious. I've been able to come back and develop relationships with all of them. My mom literally, when she left her husband that was abusive, she left him one night when he took her down to the marina at a river and played Russian roulette with her. Wow. Yeah. So she showed up at my house terrified, but said she couldn't do it anymore. And so, again, just the way things work out as a deputy, I one night was out patrolling, and sure enough, I wound up getting behind a vehicle that my stepdad was driving. Like I said, he was an alcoholic, so I pulled him over from the way he was driving. He was really drunk, and then he started talking about how he was looking for mom, and he was going to, for lack of better terms, solve some problems that he thought was there. And I looked at him, and I made very clear that he was going to jail.
Yeah.
And for a few minutes, things got a little tense because I told him he was going one way or the other, and but he decided not to fight, and he wound up going to jail. And then, just for quick reference of how things went, is after he got out, it was like maybe 2 weeks later, he got up and walked into the front room of the house, and his heart exploded, and he died. Wow. So my mom did live to him till death did them apart. But that caused a huge thing in her life, and I won't go into her story, but that was something that haunted her for a long time. But my mom and me started becoming someone that talked a lot. I tried to build the relationship with her. Initially, it was rough. She was so afraid of me, she really wouldn't call me. It took like 3 years before she would be willing to call me on the phone. But eventually, she and me got to the point where I was actually building a kind of a barn dominium in my backyard that she was going to live in half of. She went from being not afraid of me to where she's living in my backyard. And, during one of the periods where me and my mom were talking, I shared my testimony because, like I said, she was kind of haunted by it, feeling like she couldn't be forgiven because of her husband dying because she left in her mind. So I felt it was necessary to give her the testimony that I was giving to thousands of men, because at this men's encounter, initially when I was going, there were just hundreds I was giving my testimony to, but the last few times I went, there were over 1,000 that was getting my testimony.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and Ryan was right. I mean, literally, I've given my testimony probably the best I've figured over 10,000 people. So I had to give my mom that because I want her to understand if God could forgive me the things I had done, he could definitely forgive her. So one of the questions I wanted to ask her is like, if you were so afraid of me, why did you come to my house instead of my other brothers that were there? And her response was she didn't know anybody meaner than Rick but me. So good or bad, that's why she showed up. But so again, that's how much Christ was changing things in my life. So me and my mom, we talk a lot. We have a lot of God conversations. But I just enjoy it. I have learned, I feel like my ministry is to teach men and women that developing brothers and sisters in Christ, and I mean significant ones, when you're young and even when you're old, but learning to find them and love them unconditionally.
And how can someone do that? We go to church, but how can you have an authentic relationship with another brother or sister in Christ?
Well, the authentic relationship first comes with what you always hear: being willing to be vulnerable, being willing to be honest, and being willing to do it when you need to. The problem with I see in most men is if we start to fail, most of the time we don't reach out. We try to tell ourselves that I can do this, I can stop this myself, and I try to get everybody to understand that real brother you're going to have problems with. There's going to be times you probably want to hit him in the face, which is why I tell them if you can learn to develop this relationship with a real brother before you get married, well, when you get married, loving that beautiful woman's a lot easier once you realize that you can love that stupid guy. And that relationship should be one that just builds you. It should be one that allows you to be told, hey, dude, you're a negative person. You need to fix that, because negativity is lack of faith, or he's willing to tell you, hey, you're being an angry person. We need to work on that. They're willing to be honest. They love you so much they don't care about your feelings. They love you enough that they care about your eternity.
That's good.
And so, yeah, you go through the heartaches. There's going to be times, because there's going to be times when you're being honest with people, there's going to be times they're going to upset you. There's going to be times when you're just hanging out. It's not going to be fun. Something's going to happen and you're going to get, in disagreements. But it's through this process, just like with your wife, your children, it doesn't matter, that builds that bond that makes you realize that they care so much about you, that they will always be there. I tell people that kind of brother is the kind that at 3 o'clock in the morning when their phone rings and it's you, they don't wait for you to even say what's going on. They've already grabbed the car keys and they're driving towards your house.
Yeah.
They can always turn around. But if you're calling at 3 in the morning, they already know something's going on. So I tell you that you need at least 2 or 3 of those, partly because you can never rely upon one person because they will fail you. We're human. Every brother will fail you. So having 2 or 3 is necessary. So you got more than one to count on. Proximity matters. I can develop that lifelong. I mean, and I do. I have some brothers that we've committed to each other for life. Now, it doesn't mean we live in the same house. Doesn't mean I see them every week. We talk on the phone every week. We try to see each other at least monthly, but every week we're on the phone. We can, hey, what's going on in your life? How's things going? So for our lifetime, I know I've got these brothers. Now, some that I've developed move away because I live in a transient world here because I live in, we're an air base, Whiteman Air Force Base is where I live, close to where I live. I have a college where I live. So I meet a lot of people that are moving. So I don't shy away from committing to somebody. But I know that when they move on, my commitment and my interactions in their life is going to be a lot less. So I tell people proximity matters. You got to have people that are your brothers in Christ where you can reach out and touch them. And I do mean literally touch them. The other thing that I've learned is kind of weird for me, but is that hugs matter. Authentic hugging somebody says more than you will ever say to them.
Were you not like a physical touch person when you were?
No,
when you were a kid?
Physical touch. Again, because things happened in my childhood, and I think, and a lot of other stuff. To me, physical touch is disgusting. I don't want to say disgusting in the aspect that I don't like physical touch. Not because I'm trying to be a tough guy or whatever, is simply because it makes me feel pretty weird. I really don't know how to explain it completely, but it's not. It's just not something that my brain likes. But as I've done it, because I feel like that's what God has called me to do, is to show people I accept you for who you are, whether I know you or not. Matter of fact, what I tell people is true, heartfelt loving somebody and telling them I accept you fully for who you are. It's easier to do it with a stranger than with a person you know. Matter of fact, I think that's part of what makes marriage so mysterious. If you go into a house and you've been married to somebody for 10, 15 years, 5 years sometimes, for you to authentically walk up to that person and take them in your arms and say, I love you for who you are right now, at this moment. You got to let go of everything from the past, and you got to not worry about a thing in the future. You got to look at them as the beautiful creation Christ has them.
That's powerful.
And it's hard. It, to me, is one of the hardest things that people do when they're married, is to be willing to continue to see them the way Christ sees them. So, because of all that, yes, touching's hard, but I hug everybody. And yes, when I hug you for the first time, I love you as much then as I do when I hug you the 100th time. I believe that's part of what helps me change people's lives. I personally feel like and have watched my desire to hug somebody make them willing to talk about Christ because they realize I care.
And that must be for people that know you from your childhood too, to see you, hug people. I'm sure that's pretty interesting for people to see too.
Yes, my family, that was very difficult. Now I will also admit, for a lot of them, it was very difficult because of things I'd done in the past with them and other people that was kind of made them uncomfortable. There's things about me that still scare people. I think certain ways I'll act if something happens. So that really is. There's people who watch me from my law enforcement firefighter career that have even told me that some of them are in church and in Christ because they watched the change in me.
Wow.
Because yes, if I could start doing the things I was doing, then there had to be something to it.
So looking back from your time, in combat and overseas, and now that you've been transformed by Christ, how can you kind of deal with the stuff that you've seen over there, and the PTSD and all that?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that when I first came back that started showing me how to handle some things different. Like I said, I went to the thing called the men's charge, I went to what was originally, it's called men's counter. So that one's in Lebanon, Missouri. And then as I've continued to be involved, that one of my friends who went to that also has created something similar called the men's charge that he does locally. And so that involvement continues to help me, because the more I continue to follow Christ and work towards loving and helping other people, it helps me. I've been blessed by being put around men who've dealt with stuff like that and deal with it. I work for a company called Strategos International that does a lot of training to military, law enforcement, civilians in learning how to handle weapons, but as well as we teach how to set up church security and, active school shooting and all this stuff. So we're being taught how to use what we've used, what we've learned, how to apply it and help other people. And again, as Christians, we make it clear to them how we love them. Many people tell us, like off our range, we've literally had people come to Christ on the range.
Wow, that's incredible.
Because they see how we love them. They want to know, why are you guys so different? And so then we love to tell them who Christ is. So that helps a lot, because I get to continue reminding myself that when all the bad from my past starts coming at me, because it does, sometimes a whole lot worse than I want it to, because I still struggle with feeling like I deserve to have this life. I don't deserve to feel this good. I don't, but Christ in me allows me to have that, and it's because of him. Because if I'm doing it right, I'm not living for me, I'm living for Christ. And so I don't have to carry all the shame, the guilt. Matter of fact, like I tell most people, I wouldn't carry it. I reached a point where even after I came to Christ, I reached a point where I didn't feel like I was able to go the right way. Again, because of the love issue, I was trying to serve people, but I was serving them out of obligation, feeling like, well, Christ says, hey, you got to go do this, you got to do that. And you can do a lot of good things, but if it's not a God thing, if God's not sending you there, it's not going to work out. So eventually I had to pray to learn what love is. And for 3 years, God's been trying to teach me that. And through that process, I realized that by accepting love based off of who Christ says it is, God didn't come serve us first. In John 3:16, he said, God so loved the world. He loved us first. Then he came to serve us by saving us. And so that is where I started realizing that my job isn't to go serve people out of obligation. My job was to learn to love people and then serve them. And so through that, I feel like there's times where God does, he sends me to love a person and accept them and do whatever I can to help them. And all of that allows me to, when the time comes and the shame and the guilt and all the things, I've literally had people look at me after I give my testimony and say, how do you justify being alive? Well, I reached that point and I had to question that. And I won't go the whole thing, but God did a crazy thing that kind of kept me from doing it because I had told God that I was going to let him have the last thing I refused to give to him, because I'd given my money and all this other stuff. But my home, my solitude, I didn't want to give up. But eventually I did. And he wound up moving the whole family in my house for several months. And it was kind of during that month period, not because of them, but before they moved in, I decided that whenever I paid off my house, then I knew my mom was set. Then I was going to kill myself, because I felt like I was going to go backwards, that I was going to start hurting people again. And I would rather go to hell than take somebody else with me again. So I was all set in my mind that was going to happen like in December. In October, this family moved in. They're supposed to move in for just a few weeks, and they didn't move out till March. And so, I'm not going to lie, things went really bad with them, but it doesn't matter to me. Mm-hmm. I love them. I love all of them. The husband, the wife, the kids, they're still my family. Mm. But God did that and made me realize that I don't have to carry it. And when I'm afraid that I'm going to go backwards, I don't have to do anything but look at God and just try to follow where He's taking me. Mm. And so, when I wake up and I start thinking, that's where my brothers come in. Mm. I call them. I'm like, hey, dude, I just need to know that I'm not worthless, that I have a purpose, that there's a place for me. And I tell everybody that my goal is that the day I die, if I'm sitting by myself in a rocking chair reading the red letters, I know that's because it's enough. Because I told my family was graceful, but one of my brothers and me really didn't have a relationship. Because when I was a deputy, he has a drug issue. Mm-hmm. He got to a point he was going to kill me, and I didn't care. Mm-hmm. But then he started telling people he was going to just kill any deputy if he couldn't find me. So back in the old pagers days, my pager lit off, and I started calling these people that were mutual relationships of ours. And they started telling me that. So I went to the sheriff, said, I'm going to go find my brother. Sheriff didn't like that idea, but I didn't care. Mm-hmm. So he made me take at least another deputy with me. So I wound up finding my brother about an hour later. Let's just say I was faster on the draw than he was. Mm-hmm. So he decided not to finish drawing the gun he had in his waistband. I wound up arresting him. He went to prison for about 3 or 4 years, something like that. Mm-hmm. So we didn't really have a great relationship. But God told me to go love him. And so I did. And we had a really rough time for the first year and a half because he was going through some court-related issues and he was still dealing with drugs. And we had a lot of rough times where our past came up. But I started finding out that he felt alone, that nobody cared. So I've been trying to prove to him that Christ cared. And so every time, everything I've done for him, I make it clear to him, hey, it's not me, it's Christ. But he's clean right now. We have a relationship. It's still hard because we don't see eye to eye. But I love him like crazy.
Man, and God can transform any relationship. It doesn't matter how
Yes.
messy it is.
Me and him have had God conversations. He has literally done the sinner's prayer with me. Even though that everybody says that we were all saved when we were kids, I tell them I don't care. I wanted to hear it. Mm-hmm. I want to know that you're saved. I got baptized again when I was a few years after I changed, because I wanted to know for sure that I let people know who my Lord and Savior was. So it's just amazing to watch Christ move in my life. And it's, like I said, I gave him my house, and for 2.5 years, somebody's lived in my house, and it's not been easy. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's been some really serious issues with some of the people that have lived there, but it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. It's not my house, and I love them, and that's what has to prevail.
And I think that's an encouragement for other people too, because the Lord wants everything that we have, and if we're still holding on to any aspect of it, then we need to really, assess some things for sure.
Yeah, but I also tell people learning to know, like I said, the difference between good things and God things. Learning to know when you're called by Christ to do something, and be willing to accept that it's not going to be easy. Mm-hmm. That if I could do this on my own, then Christ ain't doing it. Mm-hmm. I have to be what I'm like I said. When I hug somebody, I know that's Christ. Mm-hmm. When I go love my brother, I know it's Christ. When I let someone move in my house, I know it's Christ. Mm-hmm. All of those things are not who I am, or who I was. All those things are hard for me. I want to be. I'm a naturally selfish person. I don't want to give up anything, but I will give up. I give up money constantly. I'm not going to try to go talk about what I do because I don't want it to look like it's me. I don't want people seeing that. Oh well, look what he thinks he's doing good things. Look, people, I fight with the same things constantly. Still, I'm still selfish. Sometimes I still want to hurt somebody because they irritate me. But all that dies less and less. The power all that has is getting less and less. I once was told by somebody that because of the way I've lived my life, the reason why I can relate to everybody is because the sin of my past was like Walmart. You could just walk in and pull whatever sin it is off the shelf, and me and you can talk about it because I've done it. And I don't often talk a lot about how bad I was. I keep saying I'm bad. It's not because I'm trying to make me sound like I'm this, because sometimes the problem with most of us is we want to glorify our past sins. I don't want that. I say that because I want you to understand that there's nothing Christ can't free you from. And yes, if you need to come talk to me because you want someone who will understand your sin, then come talk to me. Because I'll understand it. But really the biggest thing I'm going to do is let you know Christ understands it.
So what would you say to people that are first responders right now? What would be some practical faith-based wisdom that you would have them do?
For anybody, first responders, military, people talk a lot about PTSD. I tell everybody that there's so many different types you don't understand. There are acute PTSDs where something significant happens in your life. PTSD often requires you to have a sense of hopelessness. So like you can go to combat and you can watch a friend get killed and you'll feel hopeless about what you couldn't do anything to help them. For emergency responders, sometimes it's a career-long hopelessness that through your career you see things that upset you because you just see how there's nothing you could have done, from seeing young children in bad situations to seeing your own friends and family go through stuff. I tell everybody that the significance of your hope is Christ, and it has to start somewhere with you submitting to Christ, and that is what will change your life. And yes, it may not be done in 30 seconds. It may not be done in 3 hours or 3 days or 3 months.
Right.
But start. Look at Christ. Give him a chance. Because the peace you're seeking, the freedom you're seeking, will only come from him.
That's really good.
You have to be willing to give him it. And that's what gets the change is when you start learning how to give Christ everything. Everybody talks about he wants us. He freed us from our sins. Yes, but that's such a small part. Yes, it's great and it's huge in the aspect that that's what gives us our righteousness, the chance to be right with God, the chance to be able to go spend eternity with God who loves me more than I can even imagine. That Christ took, but Christ also says, give me your whole burden. A burden is something you can't solve. I think often we mistake the difference between what's called a burden and your load. To me, a burden is when you can't fix it. Like my brother was having some legal issues and financial issues. My brother couldn't fix that. Christ could. He sent me to do some things that my brother could do. I had to help carry the burden my brother could not carry. But there's things there that are my brother's load, and he has to carry those, and I have to know when to let him do that and to step back. Well, as professional people, even in normal type jobs, you pick up burdens, and you're not going to be able to carry them. Well, those burdens even other people can't carry.
Right.
Only Christ can carry. And so when those burdens of my past come and I feel weighed down, like I can't go another day. And there's times where I don't feel like God's sitting there beside me. There's times I feel like I'm the only person in the world and I'm still the worst person. I still know that I can just grab the Bible. The promises are for me. The promises are for you. God loves you. That's never changing. He's there for you, whether you feel it or not. I can hold on to the promises. If nothing else, I can hold on to that Bible. I know it's true. Why do I know it's true? Because I've seen it work. I've seen the power of those red letters. I've seen the faithfulness of Christ. I may not always feel it, but I know it's true. And if nothing else, I'm going to hold on to that promise. And someday, I know I will be back where I know my Lord and my Savior is sitting with me. I'll know it because I will feel it again. But if I don't quit. I pray, I seek, I go to my brothers, I get reminded, I do all the things that I know are what's needed. I read the red letters. But yeah, there's still some nights where all I can do is lay in bed and just keep telling myself, God, I'm not letting go of you.
Wow. What a beautiful way to explain it. That's such great advice. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think I want to dive into a little bit of your time as a death investigator, kind of what that was like, and how you were able to bring closure to some of the families.
Yeah, that was really unique for me, again, to show how God used me when I wasn't even changed yet, and the significance of that. So first and foremost, one of the biggest things I learned was, yes, that's the last thing anybody will ever do for you on this earth, is just figure out how you died, because sometimes it's not in good ways. And sometimes it's a powerful thing that God can do for people. I've investigated a lot of SIDS death, sudden infant death syndrome that people have had, and I have watched it change people's lives. It's mothers and fathers who lose their kids that way. I can't imagine. I never had my own kid. I can't imagine how hard that is. My mom lost my brother when I was 18. My brother Ray was killed in a car train accident, which really changed my dad too. But I've watched that happen. I've watched mothers lose their kids. I've had a friend kill himself in my backyard, and I watched what that did to his mom and father. So as a deputy, I learned that a mother and father knowing that there was nothing they could do, that their child died because of bad things, of the brokenness of this world. I've watched how that's helped them understand and work through that death. Now, as adults, same thing. I've watched where people have had to deal with issues, with people being killed by someone else. I've watched when people commit suicide, it's hard for families. Because of back then my, let's just say, disconnect from emotions, I've been able to sit with families and explain to them issues like why some people do it, and try to get them to understand that, when someone does that, there's nothing you could do. I basically feel like they're not in their right mind. That's why I don't believe when someone says when they commit suicide, they're condemned to hell. I don't believe that. I believe that by the time someone reaches that point, they are mentally not at the point where they are understanding truthfully what they do. And so I think when I've helped people understand that, it again helps them work through it. By no means have I have a wisdom. Even back then, I knew that I wasn't saying something that was drastically changing things. I think what I was saying was just giving them a chance to start to understand. And I know for most of them, it's probably through Christ that got them through it. But I also learned that when I did that, there was things about being around dead people that I think again changed my life. And as I came through Iraq, I had a pastor, one of my last deployment, that was an exceptional guy. He has a crazy story, the way God used him. But when he came back, he started a program where he talked about people having what he called was death's shadow. And he talked about when Moses had the people stay outside the camp when they came back from combat, from war, to be cleansed because they were unclean. He talks about and points to things in the Bible where he feels like that when we do things that cost people their life, and when we are around people who have passed, that there is a thing that he calls death's shadow that we pick up, a sense of death that comes upon us, that we need to get rid of. Like we talk about getting rid of shame and guilt and fear and all this other stuff. Well, he kind of believes that's something else that we pick up, is this thing that death puts around you. So through all that, as I look back to my law enforcement career, my military career, I do believe that that's a truth, because I see how it changes you and changes people when they're around that kind of thing. So I believe, especially now, when I still at times have been in situations where I've been around that, I firmly believe that's something I have to come to Christ to and let go of, is to give up what I consider the weight of being around that. Because I don't want to carry that. Even when it's someone in my family, like my dad passed, I believe that was something I had to go to Christ and let him take the weight. And some of it was like, for me, the shame and guilt that people look at me and like, why aren't you upset like the rest of your family? And so, but I also felt like, yes, that there's things about that people want to carry the rest of their life. And I don't want that. I want to let it go.
Alrighty. So in closing, why should someone follow Jesus and have a relationship with him?
In closing is a great way to put it. I think the biggest thing I can tell you is, again, the peace and freedom that everybody wants. And I don't care what anybody tells me. I know there's times where people think, I just want it to stop. I want the things that I tell myself that aren't good. I want the craziness in my head to stop. Well, that's where Christ comes. And there's times when people just think, I just want to know somebody cares. Christ cares. I just want hope. I want to know there's a reason to wake up tomorrow. There is. It's called Christ. It's called the mission he has for you to reach other people. You see, that when you stop looking at yourself and start looking out and seeing what Christ sees, seeing the people who need to be loved, you have a purpose. The purpose is to go out and to do your mission, to look outward. It's hard to feel like you can't be loved when you're sharing the love of Christ with people. I think the easy way I tell most people is, the more you do what Christ calls you to do, the more you give, the more you know what Christ is like. The more love I give people, the more I understand how much God loves me. The more grace, the more mercy, the more forgiveness I give people, the more I know how much God is giving me. As he continues to fill me, I get to understand who he is. That is changing me. That is where my hope lies. Yeah, I have rough days, but that's where I tell you that the red letters, the promises are true. And if you have nothing else, you have the promise. Read the red letters. They're true. And so when you're in the military and you're in emergency services, I don't care if you're facing war, divorce, having a new baby, getting married. You see, Christ doesn't want just all the bad. He wants the good. He wants you to be willing to look and see what Christ is doing in your life. All the good, all the bad, it doesn't matter. He wants all of you. And so don't just look for the bad that Christ is taking from you. Look at the good that he's given you. Even when you're single, go live the life Christ has for you. You see, sometimes the worst thing that anybody can do when they're in emergency services is to look around and constantly see the bad that they deal with. Even in the midst of the worst situation, Christ is there and doing amazing things. Look for Christ. Look for where he's at in your life. Because when you don't think he's there, he's there. I know, and I call it a journey. I know there's times where Christ helps me walk back to my childhood and those visions that are there that aren't good. I used to think to myself that that's why I'm the way I am. But see, I can't blame everybody. I made decisions. But one thing I do know is when Christ walks me back there, I get to see where Christ was still there. Even though I didn't know it, even though it didn't seem like it, he was there. This world's screwed up. It's broken. But I don't get to be broken for an excuse. I know that things are going to be hard, but I know Christ won't walk away from me, and he'll get me through it. So I don't care what job you do, but if you do something that makes your life feel very heavy, find Christ. He's the answer.
Wow. Thank you so much. That was very well said, and I've just had a blast just getting to be able to talk with you, and all the wisdom that you shared was just very powerful. So I really, really can't thank you enough for coming on.
I appreciate you letting me be here. I love being able to talk about Christ. Thank you very much.
Thanks again for listening to another episode of Faith in the Line of Duty. If you're a first responder or in the military and have a story you'd like to share, email me at faithinthelineofduty@gmail.com. You could be a guest on a future episode. To continue the conversation, visit my Facebook and Instagram page. Thanks again for tuning in, and join me next time for another encouraging story of faith in the line of duty.